Welcome everyone to the final presentation of our fall webinar series. This is our fifth version, focusing specifically on your area of Nantucket. We've had a few other presentations, which I'm sure I will be referring to throughout the rest of this presentation. So if you missed those, Beta and I were just talking, we will get those out to you and you can catch the recap of them. For the most part, myself, I am Jim Reese, and with me today is Joan Talmadge, the co-owner of We Need a Vacation. The two of us will be presenting today, and like I mentioned a minute ago to the group, we will open it up after this presentation for Q&A. I think we'll be presenting for about 25 minutes or so, is my guess. What we're going to do today is take a quick look back. If you missed the first presentation that we had a few weeks ago, where we did a recap of the 2021 season and a look ahead, I'll do a brief look back again of the 2021 season and also look specifically at the impact on Nantucket. What were the results for this island? Take a quick peek at pricing, and then of course look ahead to 2022 and see how things are going already, which many of you have already seen. There's already high demands looking ahead. And then there's several issues that Joan's going to go through that pertain specifically to Nantucket. And so we will address a few of those topics at the end before the Q&A. So to start, looking back, this isn't a shock to anybody, but the last couple years especially have been record demands. The season prior to that was, I wouldn't say the opposite, but it certainly did not set any records. It was it seems like a long time ago, but the 2019 season, the first full year of the lodging tax, certainly had an impact on our bookings overall. And so while things did take a dip back in 2019, the last 2 years, 2020, 2021, the pandemic years that we've been going through have just hit record highs. They've hit record demand that has allowed homeowners to book up their homes earlier, more easily. It's led to more repeat renters, and it's led to the stretching out of the shoulder season. So no longer are we talking, and end of June and early September. People are stretching on obviously into the fall and well into the fall. And so those are good signs for things to come in future years as well, as people get exposed to the off season and kind of the nice time that the nice difference that the off season provides over the summer. The other impact that we saw on the 2021 season was with that demand, the inventory was lower. What we had due to the pandemic was that there were folks that may have decided not to rent during this time. So they have, maybe they took their house off the market from renting, maybe they turned it into a long-term rental. Whatever the case may be, the inventory is lower, but we're starting to see an uptick back on the inventory. Specifically for the Nantucket demand, if you attended the first presentation, you saw a graph that was pretty much similar to this for the entire Cape and Islands. This is specifically for Nantucket, the number of vacationers, and 3 different years, 2019 through 2021. We see the typical year of 2019 at first, but the pandemic years, clear in light blue, the big spike that occurred after things opened up in June of 2020. Certainly it just, all the pent up demand showed, and that happened everywhere. But then what we were most interested in is, now that we were into the pandemic season, is seeing how was 2021 going to react. And what we saw was that we never did come back down. This yellow line here showing the 2021 numbers. The number of vacationers all throughout the year never came down to the levels that we're used to seeing. The demand just stayed high every month. And I think what we saw, you can see the spike here last year in March, that was coinciding, of course, with the rollout of the vaccine and folks' confidence level that they will be able to travel. What I also note here is that as we wrapped up October hit record number. I think October ended up being about 100% over 2020. So, we're seeing, and it's not a surprise, folks are continuing to either look for this fall, maybe they're looking for the holidays, looking to get away for the holidays, and they're pre-planning for next summer already. And I think we'll see the impact, as foreign travel opens up. What's the impact of that? We'll see, but certainly that'll be another positive sign of things to come. And then the booking numbers that we track, the same thing, coinciding with what I mentioned before about the lodging tax in 2019 taking a hit. But then the last couple of years, our booking numbers have just shot up. 6% in 2020, close to 20% last year. So really record numbers that we've been seeing in the demand throughout the past few years. We've also been looking at the new vacationers. So the trend of new vacationers coming to our site. The pandemic, of course, created this opportunity. Folks did not want to stay at hotels. They wanted their own private space, and what better opportunity than a vacation rental to provide that. So the number of folks that have been introduced to vacation rentals really took off. Even just looking for the first pandemic year of 2020, this past year, we still saw an increase in new visitors to our site. 51% over the pre-pandemic year. The number of inquiring vacationers we saw for the Cape and Islands, it was 95%, and I just looked this up, it's even higher. For Nantucket, it was 132% over 2019 for the number of vacationers that are inquiring on the site. So it really, again, everywhere we're looking, the numbers are showing this record demand. And when it comes to the new vacationers, that's what we're focusing on and trying to make sure that these new vacationers, when they come to our site, when they rent your homes, that they're not one and done, that they're not going to revert back to a hotel or revert back to, we don't want them to leave the Cape and Islands. Obviously you want them to return back to your home. That's your best interest, obviously, but people will shop around. They may not repeat to your exact rental, but we want to keep the majority of these renters coming back and continuing to experience vacation rentals through We Need a Vacation. That's certainly, we've been talking about, that's a win-win for all of us if we keep these new vacationers on our site. They may not stay as a repeat for yours, but maybe it will for somebody else on the site, and vice versa. And so that's going to be beneficial to all of us. So this is one number of new vacationers that we're going to be paying close attention to and looking to keep them on our site as long as possible and turn them into repeat bookers. In terms of shifting gears just to price increase, we've looked at this the last few meetings on price, and we did not see, this was interesting, we did not see a huge increase. This is, maybe we need more data to really support what's going on with the price increase, but regardless, we did see, after a solid 2020 season, the positive results. The 3% increase is right around average that we see year to year. So I think from this chart, we saw that the Vineyard was the outlier for the most part in terms of the increase in price. But we ran a survey before and saw that, there were quite a high, maybe a majority of folks were planning to or considering increasing their prices again for the following year. We ran a pricing session a few weeks ago. So if you missed that too will be coming out and available to you. But to go into a lot more detail, but a couple highlights on pricing for 2022. We always start off with knowing your competition. If nothing else, know who your competition is. If you're in town, who's your competition in town, or if you're outside in any areas of the islands, who they really are, that those similar homes is your competition. Compare yourself to them to see how their listings stand, what their pricing is, see where you might fall. That's exactly what a vacationer is going to be doing themselves. And we always like to say to reevaluate your pricing. There's a lot of components that go into your pricing. Where we often start with is asking the question, how well did you do last year, and how quickly did you book? It's not as easy. It's easier said than done this year because many of you booked easily or quicker than before. And so does that mean your pricing was too low? I think that has more to do with the demands, but take a look at your pricing to see where each year where you might fall vis-a-vis your competition. And then of course, with that, and I'm sure on all your minds is like, can I afford to go to a higher price? What's the impact of a higher price? Can I still book the home? But also consider what the expectation is of your guests. If you do jump up high because of this high demand, their expectations from those guests do increase. They may have expectations of certain amenities in your home that you might need to consider, and so that's another area to look at. Looking ahead to 2022, I mentioned earlier before about the lower supply in the past couple of years, where homeowners may have taken a year off. Others wanted to avoid the just the COVID restrictions and the peace of mind, so they just decided not to rent, or they decided to rent to family or use it for themselves. There's also more repeat guests. A lot of repeat guests in 2020 came back in 2021, and so just the inventory level was not as high. And you may see repeat guests. Maybe the repeat guests now have more opportunity. They feel more comfortable traveling elsewhere. They're not. Many folks stayed local. Over the last couple of years, many people stayed within the New England region if they're from here, but now as travel opens up more, there's more opportunity. And so that's something to look for as guests do have more options and the supply does open up a little bit. We'll see what happens to the demand. And I'll say that the demand will soften a little bit. I say that kind of with an asterisk, because I don't expect it really, and we've already seen in the month of October hitting record numbers, that the demand's not going to necessarily be what we saw during the peak of the pandemic, but I believe that we've kind of hit this notch above what we've saw the years pre-pandemic. So I do expect that, and I'll show you on the next slide just where our booking numbers are. The demand is going to still remain high, and probably even looking to see vacationers booking earlier than normal, and we'll get into kind of the impact of, say, things like the ferry and transportation issues may have an impact on that. And then the last piece on here is maintaining a top-notch listing. And we've spent a lot of time, we had a whole session on optimizing your listing for 2022. And we're always commenting on how you can improve your listing. We don't want you to rest on your laurels just because it worked, just because the demand is high means that everything's going to work for the following year. And so we're putting a lot of emphasis on the quality of a listing. And if you've followed our newsletters, we've been talking about the listing quality audit that's on your homeowner center. And the listing quality audit has a rating. It really, it's pretty simple in that it's going to show you a smiley face if you're in good standing, or a frown, or an angry face if there is room for improvement. And it's a guide. It's a guide to identify what you can enhance on your listing to improve it. Included in that is how quickly do you respond to your inquiries, and do you respond to all your inquiries, which is of utmost importance. So coinciding with this listing quality rating is going to be a sort order change. And so the default sort order change in 2022 is going to be this listing quality rating. So something for a takeaway from this meeting is go check out your listing quality audit, get that up to a smiley face, a green smiley face, if it's not there already. If there are things that you can address, everything on the quality audit are things that you should be able to address on your own. There's nothing in there that you have to pay for. There's nothing in there that you shouldn't be able to address on your own. But if you have questions, just let us know. And I will wrap up my portion just with a look ahead to our booking numbers, what we've seen already. Our booking numbers for the Nantucket, Vineyard, Cape, this is looking ahead to next summer. So I'm not looking at the shoulder seasons at this point or this fall. This is just summer 2022 compared to 2021. The bookings, all the bookings that we've seen so far through today is really well in advance of previous years. And so that just attests to the early bookings that we've been seeing, the early demands this fall, as people, despite the opening up of travel, there's plenty of people that are knowing that maybe they missed out on last year's rental. Maybe they felt like they had to settle for a week that wasn't desirable. Now they want to, there's many reasons to get the right home, get the right location, the right date, or the right price. Any of that, all of the above, is a reason for people to book earlier. And it's not a surprise to see bookings higher on both islands here over the Cape. So with that, I think I'm going to turn it over to Joan. Joan, you are going to handle a few Nantucket topics specifically.
I am. As you know, Nantucket is one of the most popular destinations in the country, if not the world. But its popularity comes at a price, and we're going to talk about a few of the key issues. The first is the effort that was made last year to restrict STRs, or short-term rentals. There was a serious effort this past year to restrict them on the island, and the restrictions would have limited the resident rental homeowners to 90 days of rentals a year. So that's homeowners who actually live on the island, and non-resident rental homeowners would have been restricted to 45 days of rentals. There also would have been a 7-night minimum stay for all seasons, which would have eliminated the possibility for long weekends, for Christmas stroll, for instance, or other off-season holiday rentals. There would have been some restrictions on the number of occupants in the home and the number of cars. There were a few other things as well, but those were the key ones. This warrant was defeated by a margin of 2-1 at town meeting, but it was not without a great deal of effort and work on the part of a group that was formed. It was called Nantucket Together, is the group. And these efforts are probably going to continue, so that we expect that a revised warrant might be presented at town meeting in 2022. So we're not sure what it would look like, but it's important to keep in touch with what's going on, and we just don't want this to happen on the island. It could have really devastating effects on the short-term rental industry on Nantucket. The next is population growth, and it's not surprising that both the year-round and the summer population on the island have increased over the past 10 years. The year-round population is now over 14,000, according to the latest census information that was released back in August. Some think that this might be an undercount. And of course, the pandemic caused summer residents to flock to the island, seeking isolation and safety of their second homes. And that increased. Some of these people relocated permanently to the island, or at least for longer periods of time than they generally would have prior to that. So that increases the population as well. And, you know, as always, the summer population swells dramatically, so that now it exceeds 56,000. And this puts a strain on the island's infrastructure more than ever before. So that's something that needs addressing, but we want the people to come, but we also need to manage just the whole infrastructure situation. And then there are other considerations. The lack of affordable housing, it's just this is one of the unintended consequences of the island's incredible appeal. It's really the cost of living, and it's taken a harsh toll on the people who, the segment of the Nantucket population that keeps the island functioning. And this lack of affordable housing is one of the most significant issues that Nantucket faces today. And there are a lot of things that are being done to try to mitigate this. It's gotten so bad that some people, like teachers, plumbers, medical workers, turn down job offers on the island because they can't find housing for their families. Year-round homeowners often, or renters often find housing during the off-season, and then they're forced to move once the warm weather arrives. And the locals call this the Nantucket shuffle. And that's difficult. They settle in a home, and then, of course, you know, when summer comes or spring and the homeowner wants to rent it at a much higher weekly rate, these people must relocate and find something else, which is really difficult in the summer. More and more employers are adding housing to the cost of doing business. Nantucket's hospital, for instance, provides housing for more than 50 doctors, nurses, and other medical healthcare workers, and they're continuing to build more units. Restaurants everywhere, as you know, both on the Cape and the islands, have suffered during the pandemic with an extreme shortage of staff. Many restaurants closed for a day or two during the week because the restaurant owners wanted to give their overburdened staff a break. I even saw something, I think it was an article last June, in which they said Straight Wharf was offering, they were hiring 8th graders to help them out because they just couldn't find the staff. Environmental concerns are another area. The town of Nantucket is calling for 40 coastal resilience projects to reduce the risks from flooding, from erosion, from storm surge. These are all things that pose a threat. And they're saying that by the end of the decade, this could affect more than 1,000 homes and buildings on the island. According to one report that I read by the town, the 8% of all homes and buildings on the island could be subject to coastal flooding during major storms. The town's encouraging the homeowners to start planning for the worst of climate impacts, climate change impacts. And among other recommendations is to purchase flood insurance if you are in a flood zone area near the coast. Also install a sump pump to protect against basement flooding, and to invest in storm shutters. Some of you may have already done that. The hiring dilemma is another one. Some of you probably struggled to find a plumber or an electrician or a handyman to respond to an emergency situation that you might have had, or one of your renters might have had this summer. And this is just when you need them most. It's just so hard to find people to come at. They're in great demand, and there are just fewer of them. So this is, you know, part of the problem with the rise in the population and the huge demand. Fewer people to provide more services. So what to do about this? You know, just don't wait too long to hire your team. Turnover cleaners in particular, they're just always in such demand. And it's best not to wait for an emergency, to have a repair person and a plumber lined up in case your renters call you. And once you find someone that you can trust, treat them well, and their loyalty to you will be invaluable. The ferry situation is, you're probably all familiar with. the growth in both year-round and summer population exacerbates this the ferry services. And car reservations continue to escalate at the same time that dependability decreases. There was an incident with a ransomware attack on the Steamship Authority last June, and that affected the ticketing process. I saw yesterday there was a problem with I think the high-speed ferry from Harwich, some mechanical difficulties, and of course extreme weather events add to the problems with delays and cancellations. Truck traffic has dramatically increased, as you can imagine. You know, more people on the island, both in and off season, and they're ordering more goods, and all of this needs to be transported. Over the last decade, truck trips to and from the Vineyard and Nantucket have increased by 25%. And in 2019, which was the last full year before the pandemic, the number of truck trips numbered 195,000. So it's undoubtedly gone up since then. If you've ever been, you know, at the ferry when it arrives, when the freight ferry arrives, you know what it can be like. It's just amazing to see all those trucks pulling off or getting onto a ferry. And it may be a long time in coming, but replacing diesel ferries with battery powered ones is starting to be discussed. Other countries have done this, and the state of Washington has ordered some. So the initial investment is really high, but it's much, much cheaper to charge ferries than it is to think with diesel. You know, not to mention the reduction in carbon footprint. So I know I sound like a Debbie Downer with all of this, but most of you, as Jim reported, have said that you did remarkably well this summer, and these are all issues that we need to think about, because the island is beautiful, and it's unique, and we all love it, and we want to keep it that way, and make sure that, you know, our renters do the same, and don't add to the problems. So with that,
And Joan, I'll just chime in, since we were talking about the ferry situation. This came up when we were discussing with Vineyard homeowners. There was a comment about turnover day, and how turnover day can ease the ferry reservation issues. If people have struggled to find ferry reservations on Saturdays, what we've seen is that we looked at our current inventory of homes, and for both islands, you see people are moving away. It's still about, let's say on Nantucket, about 2/3 of homeowners have turnover day on the traditional Saturday. But what we're seeing is that people are moving away. About a quarter of you have Sunday as your turnover day, and there's a movement, not very big, but 6% up from 3% in the previous years of numbers on Fridays. So I think one thing that the pandemic has provided is the opportunity for more families to be flexible with their schedules, with their work schedules. And so if ferries do become a challenge from a reservation standpoint for your guests, that is one thing to consider, is whether another day, a Sunday or even a Friday, would be more amenable to your guests. And I do think you'd still be successful. I don't think you'd be limiting yourself by turning into a different turnover day.
Thank you for joining us tonight.